big stage, and the big stage, Taylor, is where the Black Ferns will be in the semi-finals. Cannot wait against France. It will be a full house. Let's just hope they don't have the wet weather that we had today around the city of sails, literally. But what have you seen? There's been a lot of chat about the Northern Tour last year and how the Black Ferns went on that. Chelsea will talk to that as well.
There's been a lot of chat about the Northern Tour last year.
I think Chelsea's sick of chatting about it, but we'll go ahead.
What have you seen from the Black Ferns? And you know the game so well.
Yep.
What do you see with this side going into that semi-final against France that we could have a wee bit of an edge?
Well, look, the head coach, he said, we're not going to win games if we play like everyone else. So already they've got that mentality that they need to do something different. And what I've observed in the pool matches and in the quarterfinal is that they will not kick from their own 22. They want to keep ball in hand. And why wouldn't you when you've got such phenomenal strike power from 1 to 15, but particularly in that back line? You look at the midfield, Teresa Fitzpatrick has been outstanding. But then the back three, you've got the Letty Ingers, the Portia Wismans, the Ruby Tui's. But on that, Ruby Tui has not been tested at fullback. Yes, she's played 2 games there, but Wales never kicked it to her, which is surprising. But the French team, they're onto it. They're going to know that, look, she's not a fullback, and perhaps that's when they bring Renee Holmes in. Like, not doubting Ruby Tui's skill set because it's phenomenal, but we don't know what she's like kicking under pressure inside that 22. But as I said, they want to play with excitement, and they've got licence to as well. They finished pool play with the most offloads and the most clean breaks out of any other team because they want to keep the ball alive, and they're not going to play boring rugby. And that's the key difference, I think, from the end of year tour last year and to now, is that they're not afraid to just have a go and to make mistakes.
Yeah, for sure. And I think all you need to do is look at the footage from the end of year tour to just see the difference in body shapes in the Black Ferns this year.
Yeah.
And that's purely because we're full-time professional this year. What a difference that makes. You know, we're not going to work anymore and then playing international footy. So that in itself, you know, we're much more physically conditioned. I think heading into this week, the most interesting thing for me is going to be, like you said, Taylor, who starts at fullback and who's on the bench. Because this week, I found it so interesting. We had both Hazel Tubic and Renee Holmes on the bench, both cover 15. And when Renee Holmes came on the field, she actually went into first 5. I don't know if all of us noticed that, but she was playing at first 5. Hazel Tubic was at fullback. So I'm wondering if that's Wayne Smith looking ahead and thinking that he wants to play Hazel more as a fullback cover rather than a 10 cover. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. Renee Holmes is still the best goal kicker in the team, so she adds that. And we know all of our pool games and our quarterfinal have not been close enough for goal kicking to come into consideration. But it's definitely going against France and England. So it's another massive talking point.
Millsy, you know very well the coaching credentials of Wayne Smith. We know it's a hard game to win if you don't win the game up front. But what do you see from the way he's been coaching this team that maybe there is a strategy to counteract France and what they might bring physically?
He hasn't hidden away from the fact they want to play a different game, right? So it's open play. And I think, to your point, he would have looked at that, you know, Hazel being back there, because if I was France, and this is a different team that you're going to go up against. You know, what do? You're looking at a team that want to play a hard, on top of the ground, fast game from anywhere, run it out from anywhere. So what do? You want to kick. You want to kick, isolate your back three, force them into mistakes, or force them to kick it out and try and slow the game down. And so that's where he possibly is thinking, OK, if we get ourselves into trouble in those early sort of minutes, perhaps I can bring on the bench and make an impact in that way. There's no doubt about it, OK? I mean, they're going to have to front up, you know, up front. That's going to be I mean, and they have against the Welsh. Have they been tested yet? I don't think so, you know, and that's probably the difficult part. And Smithy will draw all on that sort of emotion that they would have had. They would have set up, you know, how they're going to, you know, not the bits they're going to play on the field, but the bits that sort of relate to where they're from, what the jersey is all about. We're massive on that in terms of New Zealand sort of, you know, rugby and that. So he'll draw on that for these next couple of weeks to really fire the girls up, because it's going to come down to that little bit of emotion, and they're going to need it up front, because that physical battle has to be won.
Look, and France, they have the benefit of having England in their pool, so they have been tested in this World Cup, and even their quarterfinal was really close up until the 60th minute mark when they decided to run away with it. So I think it's going to be really difficult for the Black Ferns, who, as you said, haven't really been put under any kind of pressure, especially in the back, you know, in that back three. So it's going to be really interesting to see who they do go with, Charles.
Yeah, and I think weather, I hate to say it, but weather's going to play a massive part in how these games are played. If you look at all of the highlights, and I'll jump to England here, I know we're playing France, but look at all the highlights from their try scored. Rolling mauls, pick and goes, they're all up front. Yep. Look at all our highlights, it's Portia Woodman. It's all out wide. We're playing with our skill set. So I'm hoping it's going to be a dry track. That's where we'll play our best rugby. England and France both have a great kicking game, which we haven't come up against yet. So we've talked about that. But up front is going to be where it's won for sure. And I hope, I know that Wayne Smith will be putting way more focus on adding an edge to our tight five this week and putting them under pressure.
Taylor, you've played international rugby up front for Manusino. What do you see with this Black Ferns unit, even though they haven't been tested, that maybe they have made some progress that might give you a bit of confidence against a French pack?
I think just the connections of playing together, because look, we haven't played a lot of footy, over the past few years with COVID, and they've had so many camps this year. So the tight five, also them playing more Farah Palmer Cup as well, because remember that a couple of years ago, the Black Ferns weren't even playing in the Farah Palmer Cup finals, which was ridiculous. And now they've actually been playing consistent rugby together. I think if we're looking at a front row that can really compete against France, I think it needs to be that Canterbury one, because they have sent the benchmark and they played last night and they just pushed Wales off the ball. So look, I think even our locks as well, Chelsea and I were talking before, Chelsea, Bremner, Mayako Wanikalani, Roos and Jonah Nanbu, it's a headache to pick who starts, because they've all been really good and we have really struggled in that locking position, and they're all dynamic, they're good defenders and good attackers. So I think just the whole round skill set of the front row has changed in comparison to other years. Chelsea,
the midfield conundrum has been a good one for Wayne Smith, because I think there was so much focus on the back three and Portia and Ruby and Aisha, but Teresa and Stacey are playing some wonderful footy together.
Again, I sound like a broken record, but it's a combination, isn't it? They've played so much footy together. They've been on the World Series, they've played Olympics, Commonwealth Games together. They've lived together, those two. They're great mates. So, and you can see that they trust each other on the field. I think you said it earlier, Teresa Fitzpatrick's been outstanding. Her offload game, her defence, her ability to read defence and put shots on has been outstanding. So I think he's solidified his midfield. I do feel for the likes of Amy Duplessis, who has been outstanding all year, and her missing out on a starting spot in that 13 jersey has nothing to do with her effort, her performances, her heart. She just simply doesn't have the experience that those two have. So unfortunately, there's just no room for her. But I did want to give a shout out to, she's been outstanding this year and she deserves to be in that World Cup team as well. And even just on Teresa's performance as well, she really surprised me last night, because she was almost playing like a playmaker, like Ruahei's position. The amount of space she was putting others in, her vision, it was outstanding. It's not something we'd often see from someone like her, but she was outstanding last night. She put people into space, which usually we see demand, and I think, some people accidentally calling her demand in commentary because she was playing like that. It was fantastic.
Okay, let's get our picks for the semi-finals. Chelsea, it's got to be Black Ferns. It's got to be Black Ferns, but by how much?
I want it to be a tight game. I think we need to be tested in a really tight game, even come from behind if we're going to come up against England in the final. So we'll get the job done. We definitely will. Backing the girls. 8 points.
How would 8-7 sound at Eden Park Mills?
Yeah. I don't want a tight game. There's no way I'm wanting a tight game. So, I do. I mean, and it's how fantastic has it been? I mean, that crowd in Whangarei, and so
good.
The girls are going to need it, to get in behind them. So I hope it's not close, but it is going to be. And we've always said it. Once we get to the French and the English sides, it's going to be a massive challenge. So up the girls.
If you had asked me this a couple of months ago, I would have said France, but just seeing how much the team has been improving, I have to say, look, the Black Ferns, but I agree with everyone, it's going to be really close. And just seeing the faces of the women light up every time they take the field in front of a home crowd, I think they're going to do it.